I was just like looking at some of my old material earlier, and some of it's just quite aggressively bad.
Aggressively bad?
Aggressively bad,
Harsh.
or aggressively mediocre at best.
Why do you call it that?
Because I think I came onto the spoken word scene very much like, oh my god, I'm going to write spoken word poems and I'm going to tackle these issues, and this is my like race poem, and this is my like mum poem, and all of that, and it was just, for me, that wasn't a very very conducive way of like writing poetry. Like, I didn't explore metaphors. I'm someone who really likes imagery now. Like, I only discovered that like 5-6 months ago, that I really liked imagery.
And how long have you been writing, like, sort of been consistently performing for?
About a year, maybe slightly over. Been writing a long time, and for me it's just led to a bit of insecurity about my current stuff, because I'm now like, in 2 years, am I gonna hate what I'm writing right now?
Okay.
And it's like, in terms of like getting published and like permanently like putting your work somewhere where it is permanently, I'm like, am I gonna...
Was there a gap in between you writing and then performing that stuff? Like, did you have a lot of stuff written for a while before you're performing regularly? Because I think that's a thing that I think a lot of people have. A lot of people have a difference in how they feel about their poems when they're performing them regularly and when they're not. But I mean, I'm not sure. Did you feel that?
So I was like that open letter person. Do you know what I mean? I was just writing open letters to everyone, including like the tree outside my house at one point. And then I went to Ho Noir.
Yeah.
You know Ho Noir.
Shout out Ho Noir.
Shout out Ho Noir. Love Ho Noir. And Anita basically forced me on stage, and then I just kind of got a buzz for performing, which was good. And obviously it's a buzz that's still really much with me. But yeah, I'm reading my old stuff has just made me hella insecure, because I'm like, am I gonna hate what I'm writing now?
Okay, I'm gonna let's dig into this here, because don't get me wrong, I feel similar about some else stuff as well. But like you mentioned it. What are the sort of things that you look back in your poems, you think, oh god, how did I write that and think it was good? Or like, what's the, let's really dig in. What really makes you cringe? What gives you the full body?
I think it's just it just wasn't complex enough. Well, at its core, it wasn't complex poetry, and that's not to say like my poetry now is uber complex. It's just, it was very much like, this is the issue I'm tackling with this poem. This issue is bad. Finish.
And there it is, yeah.
And there it is. And like, I'm really lucky enough that some of it was actually like received really well, which is really nice. But I hope that's a sign that my writing has improved.
I mean, it almost definitely, because that, I think that's a way that also, when you start out performing on a poetry scene, you go into like open mics and stuff, you tend to be writing on your own, and the first time that these poems see the light of day, or hear see other people, or hear other people, is at an event like this, where there'll be the applause and blah blah blah, and that's fine. But somebody afterwards may come up to you and be like, oh yeah, I like this, I didn't really vibe on that too much.
Yeah.
And that was how I started editing. Like, I know for a fact I did not edit any of my poems at first. No, literally, it was like first thought, best thought, get them all out. And then it was good and everything. And luckily enough, the scene is wonderfully encouraging that, even the people who give me criticism, it was always constructive.
Right.
It was always like, so I used to be, well, not notorious, but in my head, I used to be frustrated that I could only ever write sort of 3-minute, 4-minute poems. I had so much length, and I would layer on all of these images and rhymes and stuff like that I didn't really need. But it felt comforting to me.
Right.
But it took for somebody to tell me that, to be like, by the way, PJ, I've seen you do a lot of this. How about you try it this way?
It's actually necessary.
Exactly, but I could only have that sort of advice when somebody would point me towards it. So like now, when you're performing more, how do you edit in light of performing, and do you edit poems differently now that you are performing? Do you take audience sort of reaction into account when you're editing a poem, or does that change your poem at all?
Not so much audience reaction. I get other writers to read my stuff.
Okay. They'll also be in the audience, and that's
confusing.
They'll
also be in the audience, yeah, but I get like writers I know to edit my stuff, like writers who I have a good enough relationship with, like friends who are going to be like, this isn't your best work.
Yeah.
This isn't your best work. Or one of the best pieces of feedback I got, actually, which was Emmanuel Suga, he was like, is this a poem or an explanation of what the poem should be? And I was like,
yeah, that's Yeah.
Isn't it? And I was like, oh my god, it's an explanation. What even is poetry? It's an explanation of the poem. Like, my head just spun. And so I get other writers to read my stuff now. Which obviously when you're first coming onto the spoken word scene, you don't have that network.
Yeah, you haven't built those relationships up yet. And obviously it's a really vulnerable position to be in as a writer. Anna Khan has just started this podcast called Unfinished Edits, where it's literally a roundtable podcast where they go through a poem and it's just the editing process, but a podcast version. And so, like, you know, the poem is read and it's read by a different person. It's talked about, it's discussed, this thing, that thing. And listening to that podcast recently has changed the way that I edit, because now I just know the steps. It feels like I know the process in a more refined sense, that I can take that process to so many of my other poems. Before I would have gone, right, this is like a rappy poem. Now I'm going to have to edit it in a rappy style and blah, blah, blah. Or like, this is, you know, a withdrawn, very solemn piece. I'm going to edit in this style, or this is X style. Whereas now I feel like there is obviously a baseline way to edit, which is very, very cutting. But I think that as a poet, I was thinking as a poet and not more of an editor, I was way too precious about so many of my favourite lines and favourite bits.
Kill your babies kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely, like, kill your darlings, you know, not everyone thinks that one line is the most incredible thing. It may not be necessary. But, like, learning to go through this editing process now has been a big part of, I think, growing as a writer. And I think that everybody kind of gets to that stage. I think that when you've been in the scene for a while and you've got relationships with writers that you trust, then it's a really good way for people as a group to help each other. Space. Yeah, nurturing space. Like, but obviously you have to find your feet and get comfortable there.
Yeah, and what do you think about, like, revisiting your old stuff? Because I'm trying to juggle feeling shame about it with also the fact that, like, I wrote this at one point, and at one point I felt this was a good piece of work and I wanted to share it, and there were ideas there. And I spent time on it, you know? Yeah,
it's super important not to, like, you know, jettison everything that you were last week kind of thing, do you know what I mean? I have a bit of an interesting relationship with my past work because I wrote it all under the name of the Repeat Beat Poet, and that was specifically the sort of world it was existing in. It was very much hip-hop influenced, it was very rhythmic, all about rhyme, all about that kind of nature. I've still been writing all of that stuff now, but I've also been adding other poems that are not in that form. They're more page-based, they're more inspired by other imagery-based, inspired by other things. That now I have these two kind of parts of my poetry, which is the Repeat Beat Poet stuff and then the PJ stuff, which is, you know, I put it all under the same umbrella because it's all me.
Yeah, but that's kind of cool still though. For a set, that would work really well.
Yeah, and luckily enough, this is where a lot of my poetry practice has been in the past few months, is marrying the two together and not having such a dissonance between the two. But now I think my relationship with my past work is just about going back to it and recontextualizing it in the context of where I am now.
Growth, not abandonment. Basically.
Yeah, growth, not abandonment. Like, it's still me. It's just a previous. It's, you know, I've grown since then. It's a mediated part of me. I think about it like having different Twitter accounts in it. Like they're
your
both
old
me.
MySpace account versus your current like Instagram.
Yeah, let's not talk about Bebo. Like, I had a Bebo account, I had a Pixo account, Friendster. But yeah, it's so I've tried to adopt the good things, and, like, you know, I've tried to redress the bad things in terms of not shy away from them, but look at them and go, I didn't enjoy this. Even some of my politics were, like, you know, maybe not like totally aligned with where I am now, which is a whole other conversation. You know, I'm not sure. Have we got time to? Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, my politics was trash. I'm just gonna put it out there. Like, if anyone goes back and off on any of my social media accounts, you'll see that my politics was absolute trash. I think I'd kind of grown a bit before I actually started writing poetry, and that was actually one of my biggest inspirations for starting to write poetry was actually my changing politics. And
Same here. Yeah.
Really, that was interesting.
It was a matter of, if you have something to say, because the thing that I loved is, like, as soon as you have a platform and you have those 3 minutes, you can use that time to say whatever it is you want to say, and therefore it puts a lot more attention on what is it that you're saying, what is it that you believe, who are you, and like justify yourself. I didn't have to justify myself a lot before. I was just not doing it, and thenceforth led to, like, a lot of what you would call problematic views. And obviously no one's perfect, everyone's in a stage of progression. Yeah. But poetry, it was like, no, who was to call me out? That line was bad, and I'd be like,
really?
Oh, twice, like two big issues, and I was like, yeah.
Were you receptive though?
Yeah, completely, because it was people. So like I'm. It was issues that I had no right to be speaking on, issues from a position of privilege that I hadn't recognised my privilege.
Okay.
And the people from a less privileged situation were like, "This is trash. This is why."
Dude, stop! Yeah.
Exactly, and so yeah, I was like that. But I mean, it was a very difficult thing to go through. The first time I got called out, and I was like, "Oh no, man! Like no, I got my defences up, but very naturally I was like, let's just try and learn about this. Did you have a similar thing, or? It's difficult because we're talking about very private things here, but...
No, so do you know what? I think my old stuff, when I look back at it and cringe, it isn't so much from like a political my views have changed point of view, because I think the majority of my political views had actually shifted before I started writing. It was more a case of like just the actual writing itself. Or issues that I still like to address in poetry, just in a bit more of a different, more complex way, I think.
More nuance, more historical context, political context, social
and
context.
more like actually sharing a part of yourself with the poem and with the audience or reader, rather than just being like, here's the issue, it's bad.
Yeah, especially because it's a very stereotypical thing about poetry nights, is that everyone will be like roughly kind of left wing, and everyone will be vaguely talking about the same issues. I know, and it's true, and like it's a problem as much as it is a fact, just because it's the way that these places work.
Yeah.
But when there is genuine consensus at trying to improve, actually like trying to, using poetry as proper social function, using it to change society actively, that's a really powerful way that you can change opinions and change the way that people actually think at a poetry night. Because hey, if we're all here trying to make sure that people aren't oppressed, trying to make sure that underprivileged people are given accurate representation and given a voice, then hey, like that's a genuine social function of poetry.
Yeah, and if I just get up and if we just get up and are like isms are bad, then it can that poetry can be absolutely beautiful, and it can be life changing, and it can be incredibly well written, and I love it. It's just not what I want to be doing right now.
Yeah.
To be honest, that's just not how I personally want to tackle the issues anymore. I think I'm in a very like oversharing space right now, so I'm like I actually want to like put a part of myself in the poem.
Did you feel that you were in an oversharing place when you started writing poetry, or was it more?
No, it wasn't. My poetry actually wasn't really personal. It was literally just like, this is bad. There's actually only one poem that I wrote quite early on in my journey, which I still share, which is like, to the woman who called my hair unprofessional in job interview feedback.
It's a great poem.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And that's the only one I still share. But like, I guess that kind of summarises the mood of that poem. Like, if you read that poem, you wouldn't really know anything about myself other than like,
one woman apparently called your hair unprofessional one time. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm not in that poem.
That's very interesting, actually. And then, so obviously you feel that you're more in your poems now.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Does that feel comfortable for you?
No.
A little bit, a little bit vulnerable.
Really vulnerable, but I think that also comes from, like, we were talking about how nurturing the spoken word space is. Like, I feel like I can put parts of myself in the poems now. Yeah, very much so. I got a lot of that. The ability to feel vulnerable, the ability for me to not be the repeat beat poet all the time, to not be performing, but to be me, to be like to be sharing something inherently a little bit closer to myself. Yeah. So But both are valuable, right?
Yeah, completely. It's just about knowing. It's about knowing which one I'm emphasizing, and it's about knowing which one I'm inhabiting more at that point, and like the pros and cons of each. You know, there's things that I can get away with saying in terms of confidence and stuff as a character, effectively a non-stage persona, that I wouldn't feel comfortable doing. But then also there's vulnerability that I feel that the repeat beat poet might not have. And so I think that's a lot. That's a big part of my growth in the past 4 years I've been writing.
Would you still share would you share the first poem you ever wrote?
Yeah, but I'd do it with a lot of caveats. It would come with a big 2-minute spiel of, right, here's what it was.
Let me set the scene. It was 2012.
Would you share the first poem that was The Woman Who Called My Hand Professional, was that the first poem you ever wrote?
Oh my god, it was one of the first. No,
Would you share the very first poem that you ever wrote?
No.
No?
No.
And we're going to leave
I was a mess.
I think we'll leave it on that wonderful clip.
Not even
I think we're out of time. People are going to have to research that poem.
No, my God. No, they can't actually find it anywhere. Cool.
Once again, thanks to Tyrone. Thanks to Tyrone for putting these together.
Can they?
This is Antonia Jade King. I'm PJ, the Pete Beat Poet. Thank you.